Welcome, eCom Logistics Nation. Thank you for joining today's episode. We're on a mission to share e-commerce logistics insights, trends, successes, and challenges from the leaders and innovators in our space.
We're concerned about the cost, but not at the expense of the consumer. I think that was the difference, which meant that you could then keep your consumer and the brand loyalty became even higher. So it was more of an investment in terms of where we were. I mean, the trick will be how we come out of it because everything is so much more expensive these days.
Welcome to this episode of the eCom Logistics Podcast. Ninad and I are really excited for today's chat with our guest and supply chain icon, Sandra MacQuillan. Sandra is Chief Supply Chain Officer for Mondelēz International. If you're not familiar with Mondelēz, they are the parent company for amazing snacks enjoyed all around the world. Brands including some of our family favorites like Cadbury Dairy Milk, Chips Ahoy, Oreos, and Sour Patch Kids, to name a few. Sandra leads all aspects of the organization's global supply chain, including procurement, manufacturing, logistics, engineering, sustainability, and safety. She joined the company in June of 2019 from Kimberly-Clark, where she was their first ever supply chain officer. Prior to her time at Kimberly-Clark, Sandra worked at Mars Incorporated for more than 20 years, holding supply chain leadership positions around the world. In her last role at Mars, she served as Global Vice President of Supply Chain for its $15 billion global pet care business. Sandra, it's an absolute honor and pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us and welcome.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm very pleased to be with you both, actually. So thank you.
Yeah, it is actually an honor. And out of all the snacks that we just mentioned, the one that didn't get mentioned is called 5-Star. I love that product growing up. I just have to say, my favorite of all times. I know you can't get that in North America. So, Sandra, I don't know if you got any control over that, but yeah.
Sadly, the customers need to ask for it and our consumers need to ask for it. And all our consumers for this tend to be over in Asia. But it's a fantastic product. It really is. I completely agree with you, Ninad. Very nice.
Awesome, Sandra. There are so many interesting places to start, but we thought maybe we would begin with your experience at Kimberly-Clark. So it's 2015, and you're given the opportunity to lead as their first ever Chief Supply Chain Officer, which is a time when it was less common than today for the C-suite to include supply chain. And you had an amazing and pretty rare opportunity to build that organization from the ground up. And a lot of our audience is in that build phase of their supply chain. So would love if you could share maybe some lessons learned or key takeaways from that experience to maybe help the next generation of supply chain leadership.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. So yes, it was 20. If I go back to very, very briefly to Mars, I was never going to leave Mars and was never going to not be in Mars. And then this amazing opportunity to create my own toy box almost in supply chain came along, and it seemed to fit for me from a values point of view with the company. I knew I was going to learn a lot from the CEO that I was going to work for, who was a guy called Tom Falk, which some people may well know. He was a really great CEO. And then also I thought, well, who turns down the opportunity to create something? And if we're in supply chain, a lot of us want to create things with people to have success, with everybody, not on our own, but with everybody. So this just ticked all the boxes for me. So I did leave Mars, which I wasn't expecting to do, and I went over to Kimberly-Clark. So we left from Belgium, and I've lived in several countries, but we left Belgium and went to America. So we had a great adventure, my son, who was 13 then, my husband and I, and we went over to learn more about American culture, American ways of living, and also about building this wonderful opportunity and this wonderful organization in supply chain. So what kind of tips would I give people? Well, don't lose sight of what supply chain is what I would say at the start. There are key principles that we have in supply chain around who we are and what we are. They apply anywhere. So if anybody tells you have to rethink everything, that's not true. There's core basic fundamentals, service, quality, safety, all these kind of things. Cost, of course, cash, of course, in terms of everything we do. They do not change. So if you go in with the anchors of those, you can then work out, well, where is the company that you're moving into? And the company I was moving into was very manufacturing focused. So then it tells you, okay, that's great. So you're manufacturing focused, but actually that's not supply chain. Supply chain is right the way. Logically, you start at procurement and the supplier and you go through to the shelf. The way that I always talk about it is starting with the consumer and coming back to the supplier so that everybody knows what they need to do. So you can start setting up, and when you've got something that's new and sexy and not quite sure yet, you can start bringing in the, those kind of messages quicker rather than a slower transformation that's happening. So I would say hold on to the principles, hold on to what you're really trying to do as a supply chain, not as individual functions, and believe in communication, because that was the thing that really helped, was communicate. Then the thing I would say, do not expect it to be easy, because even if you're the most optimistic, positive person, some people will not want the change. And some people aren't even in supply chain that will not want the change. Some people are. So part of the process was to move procurement into supply chain with manufacturing, and it was just manufacturing. And I said, no, I need logistics. Logistics needs to be an organization on its own now. So we created logistics. So then we had procurement, manufacturing and logistics together. Procurement, some of the procurement team weren't so happy to be there because they'd been independent doing their own thing, and now they were part of a bigger play. So I spent a lot of time communicating on why was this important for the consumer and the customer and for the supply chain in Kimberly-Clark. And that really helps if you can bring it into a context on metrics, reason why, principles and people. And that was what I sort of focused on there. So the tip would be, don't expect it to be easy. It's going to be hard. Some people don't want it. So you have to work really hard on the comms. And then the last tip I would give is get the right people around the table with you. Make the tough decisions if they're not the right people, and get the right people around the table with you who are going to be working with you, not against you.
Really great advice there, Sandra, because, a lot of our listeners, and, we have a mix of the type of listeners that we get on the podcast, and a lot of them are actually brands that, with the emergence of the e-commerce brand, a lot of them are independent owner-operators that started their business. They are the marketing. They were the folks doing the procurement. They are the ones that are trying to negotiate their 3PL deals, and they are the ones that are running the warehouse. They are looking at how do they go about shifting their strategy as they grow, because we have seen rapid growth from where they were doing $5 million, $10 million in total merchandise value sold in an annualized manner to now doing $500 million, right? And that's just within the last 3 or 4 years. Some tremendous growth, and it's still the 10-person company. And the conversation that we have with them is you need to bring focus on supply chain as a separate function, right? And you make a great point about the procurement side of things, right? Where I've seen a lot of companies where procurement was not part of supply chain, right? And I have seen, and I won't name names, because I was closely attached to one where the procurement side not being connected to supply chain caused disruptions for multiple years in a row just because we didn't know what was coming, right? So I worked on the supply chain side and we just didn't know what was coming until things showed up. And then it's like, figure out the capacity somehow to be able to manage all of these products that just came through the door. So really valid points.
That's not actually supply, that's dump. That's not a supply chain, because really the supplier should be at the beck and call of the consumer, which goes via the company that are actually making the stuff. So, and you can work in both. You absolutely can work in both. One relies, when it's separate, it relies very much on brilliant relationships to make and very clear metrics and deliverables. The other one is slightly more fluid and flowing, and people feel that they're all part of the same thing, but they can both work, So I prefer the supply chain model. Otherwise, without procurement, it's not really a chain,
Agreed completely.
Yeah, and I think, Sandra, something you had just mentioned, obviously, in building that organization, right? And how important it is to have the right team, and if someone's not working out, be able to make that decision quickly. So I'm wondering, do you have any, when you're looking to build and when you have built your teams, are there certain attributes that are must-haves when you're interviewing, bringing someone on or advancing someone within your organization that's critical from your standpoint?
Yeah, there's probably 3-4 things. There's one, the capability to dig deep into the detail and operate if they need to, no matter what level you are, including me. Knowing when to go in and to actually manage the situation if it's a crisis, because they still happen and they always happen in supply chain. That's why we love it. It's never a dull moment. I think we love it when it's like that, but not always. Yeah, we better, because it's not going to change. Well, it might change, but not that much. I think, so you're looking for people who can do that. You're also looking for people who know when to step out and develop the talent that's working for them and create the space so that their people can be successful. And I include myself in that. I spent quite a lot of time looking at what kind of leader do I want to be, and came to the conclusion that, and women don't have a lot of confidence. And I certainly went through a lack of confidence phase. And it took me a long time to say that I want to inspire people and create the space where they can be their best every day if they want to. You don't force people to do it. But when you get that belief and what you want to do in your mind, it can apply at work, it can apply at home, it applies with your family, your friends, and then that can be your guiding principle to go through this as you walk through life in this space, And I think it gives you an anchor to hold on to when the world goes upside down, which it often does, in terms of what we're doing. So you want someone who knows what their role is able to actually motivate and encourage people. So has good EQ. So they've got the IQ to be able to handle the issues. They've got the EQ to handle the people. And they're not afraid. They're actually afraid. They're not wanting loads and loads of risk, because you would need to be careful with supply chain around risk, but they're not risk averse. They will take and play in spaces to learn more. And it sounds really weird, but in my team, and supply chain is very process, I am not a process person. I value process, but I don't live for it. I am not a good planner organizer, although I shouldn't say that, but I'm not. But I have people in the team who are brilliant at that. So then the team becomes a great diverse set of people, both from an ethnic, cultural and way of working and thinking, which means you get the best out of the team because everybody's doing the things that they're really, really good at. So that would be the other thing I would say, is when you're building your team and looking for people, yes, operational, strategic, and thinking about how you're going to build the talent. But the other one is, how does the team come together and what differences are in the team that can be mutually, there's synergy, there's synergistic relationships that you can use there. And don't be surprised if people don't get on sometimes, because when you've got that much difference, people will have different points of view. And I actually love that. I've loved that in all the teams I've worked in. Bit of discussion around, I don't agree with you, gets you a much better answer at the end.
I think that's fantastic. So you have your awesome career at Kimberly-Clark. In 2019, you joined Mondelēz International as, again, Chief Supply Chain Officer. You've probably got your bearings. You're there for a little bit of time, and within a year, the pandemic hits, and everything changes. Supply chain is all that's talked about in the news, and like you said, crisis to me, crisis is supply chain life, right? I mean, that comes with the territory. So I think for our listeners too, like, learning how you led in that time of crisis, with so much responsibility at Mondelēz, with such a huge organization that you were leading, what were your top priorities? How did you kind of face those early months and maybe even the year and a half after the pandemic really hit the world?
So the first thing that I focused on, and I absolutely believe in, are the safety of our people. And we didn't know about COVID. We had no idea what COVID really was. So the first thing that we all focused on in my team, and probably as we learned more about it, we spread that across the whole of the organisation. What we focused on was, how safe are our people? How much can we learn about COVID to manage the separation or segregation that we need? What PPE do we need to put on? How do we get people to inoculate, which nobody really wanted to do at the start because nobody understood it, and that was fair enough as they were building up more understanding. And how do we keep people understanding that when they go home, that was one of the biggest issues that we had, particularly in places like Latin America, which is a very close family network. And people would have a different mindset when they went home, so behave differently at home, lots of socialization, lots of connection, and of course that caused COVID to spread. So we had to do a lot of work telling people how much we care about them, because we do, putting in the right PPE protocols and ways of working. And we set up a special team to be able to do that, which then spread across the whole organisation. And then we had to help people with their families as well to know about what that meant, because we were finding that people were fine at work and then going home and some of their family had contracted it and they were losing family members, and that of course affects their mental well-being and wellness physically. So that was where we started, was making sure people were okay, because once people felt safe, then they could come into work and work, So I was so proud of what everybody in Mondelēz supply chain did, because we managed to continue supplying when lots of other companies hadn't. I think part of it was our footprint. We're pretty much everywhere in the world, that we manufacture closer to the consumer than others. But even with that, we had to make sure that it still operated well. So we had an advantage probably in our footprint, but we didn't have any advantage in terms of our people. We needed to make sure they were safe. So that was the biggest thing I think we did. People could relax, they could come to work and work, had lots of communication with them on, tell us how you feel about this, tell us what you're doing, tell us, can you improve it? And when you ask people, can you improve what we've done? Oh my God, they love it. We had people making face masks, we had people doing 3D printing of things. It was ingenious, some of the things that we came up with, and making that work. So that was what really happened for us on COVID. And we thought it would be over in a month. And of course, even now, it's still around. And we just don't talk about it so much, which is a bit of a shame, because it's still very significant in lots of places, as we see when hospitals get full, where you've got the respiratory virus, and then you've got COVID, and then you've got the flu, so we're pretty much going to be stuck with this for many years to come, I'm sure. But we found a way to make it work, and then what we did.
I mean, couple things right there, Sandra. We have asked this question around pandemic, right? Like, we host a podcast. Naturally, if a guest comes on, we want to talk about your experience in the pandemic. And I do have to say, almost out of everyone that we have interviewed, I loved the fact that your first thing that you spoke about was the people aspect of things, because we kind of get lost in that when we think about supply chain. Yes, it was terrible for the company, the supply chain. We had to rejig it. We had to go through transformation, things that we have never done before. But what about the people? A lot of pain and suffering ended up happening at that time, and having that focus and making sure that people were good. And of course, your supply chains or your design for how Mondelēz is set up, where you're closer to the consumer, definitely helped you in making sure that you are still getting products out the door, but still it was the focus on people.
But you're right, actually, because in some countries we had to close stuff down. Governments closed it down. Philippines, I think, was one. Malaysia may have been another. India was obviously quite hit by all of it in terms of different states that they went to. Australia, we had all sorts of places, particularly over in Asia, that were shut down, that we then had to sort out the supply map for. And I had a regional organisation as well, that we would work global and regional to try and make sure we could supply from anywhere in the world. And were concerned about the cost, but not at the expense of the consumer. I think that was the difference, which meant that you could then keep your consumer, and the brand loyalty became even higher. So it was more of an investment in terms of where we were. I mean, the trick will be how we come out of it, because everything is so much more expensive these days. And it's, you want some on the bottom line and the top line if you can get it. But most of the time we reinvest in the top line because we're looking for the growth. Sometimes we need it on the bottom too.
Exactly. And were you in the midst of, so you joined in June of 2019 at Mondelēz. Were you looking at supply chain transformation already? Did it accelerate, or you had to literally get into action and go, we need to transform to support what is happening to the world, right? Or, you spoke about inflation, the cost of logistics, the cost of shipping, all of these things, the supplier pressure. So what did that look like for you?
Well, when I first arrived, it wasn't that, because that hadn't happened. I came in and looked at it and I realized it wasn't, a bit like Kimberly-Clark, it wasn't a supply chain. They called themselves ISC, which was Integrated Supply Chain. And I asked the question when I had the team together about 2 months after I joined and said, do you call yourself Integrated Supply Chain because you are integrated or because you want to be? And they went, we're not, are we? I said, no, you're not even interdependent yet. And why would you want to be integrated? You'd want to just be a supply chain. And you want to run that way. And they had different names for different functions. And I said, why don't we just call ourselves Mondelēz Supply Chain? Because that's what we want to be, don't we? And yeah, that's a good idea. And I said, then we can focus on the right stuff rather than being separate functions that have to connect at the peripheral, So it wasn't about COVID or anything like that. It was more about a transformation in mindset and behaviors, which meant a transformation in metrics. It meant a transformation. It meant having a strategy that was a supply chain strategy. It meant having a vision that was a supply chain vision. So if I think about what we did a vision around basically creating the best we could from shelf to field in terms of what we wanted to do, focusing on the consumer. Then we had strategies that you broke down that vision into things like, well, what about service? What about cost? What about talent? What about digital? What about networks? So you basically split out 12 different areas that you wanted to focus on. Because if you do more than that, you're going to be exhausted. People will just be running around like headless chickens trying to make stuff happen, and you won't make anything happen. Well, you might, but it won't be effective. So we did that. Then we went into the next phase of, okay, so what are the metrics that we want to manage? But there need to be metrics that apply to procurement, manufacturing and logistics, and the consumer can see the benefit. So we created all of that as well around the core principles of what we're supposed to deliver in terms of cost, cash, safety, all these kind of things in terms of service, engagement, everything but not too many. We had a tier 1 and a tier 2 so that people could understand what they were. So we did that as well. And then then gives people a direction of where are we trying to go to and what does it look like when we get there. And then here's how we're going to make it happen. So why are we here? What are we going to do? That's the strategies and the roadmaps. And then how are we going to do it? Well, we're going to put the best people in to be able to do this. And we're going to make some tough decisions if we have to. And if people don't want to step up, that's okay. That's their choice. But it's a choice you've got, So that's what I focused on for the first 6 months, 7 months of my job. And then COVID came. And then everything shut down. But that didn't stop us doing what we were doing, because if you think about what we were doing and what we were focusing on, you want it anyway. You want the consumer to be at the center of everything you do, if not more. So you take out the SKUs that don't make any sense because you're focusing on what the consumer actually wants to buy. So if anything, our strategy played more to creating value from shelf to field. It created even more value for us in terms of managing the pandemic.
Exactly. And maybe just a follow up to that, right? So all of this happens. And one of the things that I focused on, or at least looked at in the market during this time, specifically for CPG companies, was a move towards the right to play in the omnichannel digital space. Right. And I have worked with a few CPGs in the past where it's like, how do we play here? Because we provide products to these companies. We have challenges where from a price point standpoint, how do we, position ourselves? How does Mondelēz or, your perspective on digital change? Because there was everything moved to digital. There was very little store traffic. Did you make any changes to that? Or was that a journey that you were already on to do omni-channel from your perspective and kind of step in? And it's also globally very different from different parts of the world, but just a general sense on that.
Yeah, I think you make a good point that people didn't go into the bricks and mortar anymore. They couldn't. So naturally, they migrated to e-commerce or omnichannel. We saw that in things like the travel business, where World Traveller, that it just fell over overnight because nobody travelled, so nobody could go and buy the Toblerone sticks that are wonderful or the packs that you want to buy, or the Oreo bags, huge bag. Nobody could do that. So by default we had to go into a space where we were looking at how much more can we do online, but we didn't even really have to push that because people pulled for it. And then if you could work as you worked with the retailers, they were obviously wanted your product so you could work together with them. I mean, trying to do it on your own would never have worked. You need to work with the retailer. And if you've got good retailers who want to make it a success, they can see that they will win if you win. So we did quite a lot of that. The sales teams did a fantastic job of working that through with them as much as they could. And we also set up a whole organization around e-commerce because we were very small in e-commerce. If you think about where e-commerce often is, then we're very much a biscuit company. People don't buy, they buy biscuits, but not so many biscuits on that. They buy more the chocolate and some of the candy stuff that we make. So this then was bringing that into the umbrella and the family of products that you buy. So you have to think again about making sure, so the R&D organization and the logistics team worked very closely together to make sure we were getting people the product in the right quality that they needed to get, because giving them a bunch of broken biscuits isn't going to help our brand at all, you know. So there was a lot of work that went on, quite a lot of very, frenetic, not frantic, but frenetic work to make sure we could meet all of these. And I worked very closely with the R&D head, who his team were just amazing as well. And we just worked with the focus on how do we get this out where it needs to be. And actually what we saw was the e-commerce world grow significantly. At the same time, about however many months after that, bricks and mortar opened up and you could go back in there, and you needed to be ready to do both then. And what happened to us on that second year was we basically were overwhelmed with demand, particularly in North America, where people hadn't been able to do. We kept our sales at the right level as much, through lots of different ways that we could do. So we had a really good year, sadly, for the pandemic, but good for us, because we could keep supplying. The second year, it was really good because the supply just kept coming, but actually it was more costly. So you had to think about price increases with the P&L owners. But at the same time, you could also look at what else do I need to do to keep the volume where it is. And then on the 2.5, 3 years in, we were overwhelmed with demand. And then you haven't got much resilience to be able to fight back. So one of the learnings, I think, was make sure your demand forecast and supply forecasts are actually connected together. And if you don't have your sales team and your supply chain team and your R&D team and marketing teams all working cohesively together, you miss it. And we had that particularly in North America, where they weren't really communicating to each other. So you missed the opportunity to be ready for the pull-off, Whereas in Europe, it was probably a bit better, but then Europe is more mature in that space anyway, in most companies. There's a cultural piece around the 4 or 5 regions in the world. They all seem to behave in the same way in any company. I've just felt that all the time, North America tends to be more in the moment. Europe will be a bit slower, but clearly has thought it through. Asia never stops, and then Latin America is the same, just trying to beat everybody. And that's the way I summarize them. They're all fantastic and I love them all, and they're all different, so. Yeah.
Comparing global regions as far as supply chain innovations are concerned, Sandra, what's your perspective? Because I've had the fortune of looking at supply chains in other parts of the world, and I'm very proud of what we do here in North America. But I feel like the pace of innovation is not as fast as some of the innovation that we are seeing in other parts of the world. What's your perspective on that, right? We are very North America centric and also Eurocentric to a certain degree. But as you look outside, where do you see the true innovation happening in the supply chains?
I tend to look more towards Asia Pac and Latin America. I think part of it is because they get left on their own a lot of the time. In theory, because they're so far away from the mothership, be it Europe or North America, they get to play in a different place, and we've learned a lot from Asia Pac and from Latin America and translated that into what could that be in North America and what could that be in Europe. Now, we don't always have it that easily done because some people just want, it's not invented here, so I'm not doing it, and let's not kid ourselves, that's not gone, that's still around, and that takes a high level of maturity to get to where you just think, yeah, that sounds really good, I'm going to do it, because it's really quick. But the world's not quite there yet. People still feel the need, which I understand if they've not had recognition, they feel the need to be seen, so it has to be theirs. And as opposed to when we get to hopefully at some point when business and corporate world gets to the place where we're going to share with each other for the better of everything, then, it sounds a bit naive, but I do believe that's what we should be doing corporately. We should be connecting together where we can to make it better for everybody rather than one company beats another. I mean, I'm not suggesting it will happen in my lifetime at all, but that would be great because we've got so much knowledge and expertise and capability. Why can't we use it to do that? And particularly around sustainability. I think sustainability for me is waiting to be embraced by corporate America or corporations, full stop,
And and when we talk about sustainability, we need to stop talking about being carbon neutral. It's asking ourselves, how do we pull back? There is a lot of stuff happening around being carbon neutral. And for the folks listening on their audio, I'm doing the air quotes right now when we talk about carbon neutral, because there is definitely corporations, specifically in North America, have responsibility to start talking about how do we pull back on carbon, right? Like, how do we go back? Because neutral is not going to solve the problem. And, maybe we touch on that, your perspective on like, what are you doing, globally from a carbon footprint, from a sustainability standpoint? And then maybe just let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. My team and I and the corporation actually, right from Dirk down, very focused on zero emissions. There's no two ways about it. We want to be zero emissions by 2030, I think it is, but with key milestones on the way. So we've got something for 2025, and then we want to be zero on with CO2 2030, yeah. And we'll go quicker if we can, but obviously there's some trade-offs there. So we're doing things like electric ovens versus gas ovens. And as technology comes along, we'll shift again, as we learn more about technology. We also work with our suppliers, and we've got several, 2 or 3, if not more, things working through now. We've got Cocoa Life, which actually is about making sure that the cocoa farms are fair, they're not cutting down the wrong trees, they're not using child labour. Same with palm oil. We're not in that kind of palm oil now. So that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at, is to make sure we do the right thing with the planet. And I think that's really important. Are we there yet? No, we're not, because nobody is, I don't think, yet. But are we determined to get there? Yes, we are. And we know we need the whole of the organisation to work on that to be able to get there. You need the commercial side as well as the technology side. So those are the kind of things that we're doing. We're also we're probably over-investing, but rightly so, in sustainability to make sure we're doing it. We're changing some of the ways that we measure sustainability in terms of getting products approved to be able to invest, which is really important. So you're making it slightly easier for sustainability projects to be approved, so that and slightly longer paybacks, which, in our company, we have very strong financial focus. So that's been a big win, actually, to be able to do that. And it's now a core part of our strategy overall for the company, but also in our CapEx budget. So in our capital budget, it becomes very clear where sustainability sits and how much we're spending on it. So we're doing those kind of things, definitely. And we do a lot of talking about it to say how important it is. And one of the things I always say when people ask me, I don't throw it down their necks, is I don't want to be neutral. I'd like to be carbon positive. I'd like to give back if I can. So what's the technology that I need to get into that I can give back? The planet becomes better, not just okay. Because if it's okay now, it's already not good. So, how do we mend it? How do we walk towards mending it?
And to the point that you make, Sandra, about like integrated supply chain, or, where you say procurement, logistics, and manufacturing, right? Like the 3 arms. Do you feel that sustainability as a portfolio needs to belong within supply chain, or do you feel that it needs to be a counterbalance within the organization as a separate C-suite position that is actually, providing oversight? Like, what's your opinion on that?
It's a very good question. We've got oversight. We've got a very senior... We've got a very senior role in Mondelēz that is our chief sustainability officer, and she's great. The thing for me is it's not connected enough with the operation that's happening. So we've got another organisation in supply chain that does the operational sustainability piece, which is also really good. There's some great people there too. And at the same time, it sits in my boss's, the CEO's portfolio as something really important. So we've got digitisation, we've got growth, We've got sustainability as the fourth pillar, and we've got talent as the different language, but we've got 4 pillars that form our strategy, and sustainability was added about a year ago as one of those, which is a real coup. Do we want to be the best in sustainability? Probably not, but we want to be in the middle of the pack to make sure we're doing the right stuff and we're influencing where we need to influence. So I think we've really got hold of the agenda as much as we can. I think it needs to be tightened up. There needs to be more accountability and responsibility across all the functions for it. We need more commercial push so that the consumers understand the context on sustainability and why they should buy this product, even pay a little bit more for this product because of all of this stuff. We have something called Harmony Wheat, which basically means that you give up some of your acreage or metre square to wildlife and wild flowers and stuff whilst you're growing your wheat in the same field. Now, clearly that means the yield is lower, but actually you're helping the planet. So we don't do that everywhere, but that's the plan, is to start evolving that so that we are continuing to do it. Currently, that's the plan. We probably need to work it through to make sure it does economically fit. Otherwise, it's going to fall over. Those kind of things do. They just get lost. So, but that's where we are. And I've been a very strong proponent of making sure sustainability is at our core.
Yeah, exactly. Sustainability can't be on the menu. It needs to be at the table, right? So you make some really authentic points over there, Sandra. Really appreciate that. Maybe just quickly switching gears, because at one point we spoke about, regional innovation, and innovation comes down to things that in a given region, whatever their necessity happens to be or their challenge happens to be, they will innovate around it. And let's talk about a little bit in the automation space. We see in North America specifically, right, where warehousing, distribution, transportation, so that logistics arm of things, manufacturing's always had high innovation and it continues happening. But within the logistics space, we also have segmentation, food and beverage, CPG, you got retail, e-commerce. We see a lot of investment in the e-commerce retail space just because our necessity in North America is labor cost, right? And that innovation is being seen. And we are seeing CPG slowly starting to make moves over there. What are you seeing as far as distribution, transportation side of things are concerned within logistics from an automation in the CPG space? Like what gets you excited about things?
Yeah, so we set ourselves a target about 2 years ago. By 2030, if not sooner, but that's not that far away now, to have a lights out factory and a lights out distribution centre connected, so that we could basically use that digitization and that automation view. So we've been doing a lot of work, particularly over in Asia and Latin America, but more in Asia, around advanced process controls, these kind of things. How do you then feed back to be able to then take the people out of the line, but keep the ones that you need to be able to, you grow their role in a different way. So you don't necessarily cover everybody, you basically up their game. And that's been going really well. We've got lines that are running with 2 people over in China. And our distribution centres, China's amazing actually, they've been able to sort of play with this, and we've been able to spread it as we go, But the same on the distribution centre, that they're managing now to have robots in there, which is what you would hope, so it's not, when we say lights out or no touch, that doesn't mean that nobody's in there, because you need 1 or 2 people there to make sure it's safe. That could be for just, that's it. People go, does that mean it's going to run? No. We're not going to risk the business for that. But what we are going to do is minimise the number of people that are there, which takes the labour out. And actually, Australia's pretty bad with labour costs, so North America is. And North America has more unions than most of the other places in the world, but labour overall now is growing anyway. So this makes more and more sense to do as we move forward.
Absolutely. And when you say lights out, whenever they are built, I would like to go in with a flashlight and just take a look at it, because that's the stuff that gets me all excited. So
it's great, isn't it? And I got so excited when I saw a video. We couldn't travel at the time, but I saw a video of the China lines, and I just was I was in awe of what they'd been able to do, and we hadn't been able to see it because we hadn't been able to travel because of COVID, so it's incredible what you can do when you embrace technology. And I just think digitization and technology are amazing. Same for the planning process. You need all of that to be digitized digitized to be able to make a difference. And I have to say, I've come across, certainly in this role, because we're so keen on digitization, you notice that people who don't like change or are afraid that they're going to lose their jobs don't want to do it. So it takes much longer to be able to get there, because you have to convince people, look, the jobs that are going to go are the ones that you don't want. They're the jobs that are packing stuff into the box that we have temps for. Yeah, that's why we've got temps. We haven't got people, Mondelēz people doing it, because we don't need Mondelēz people. The plan is that it will, eventually over time the job will go. So you have to work really hard to get people to feel that they want to take the risk, because they want to control. And people don't like it if the forecast, the demand forecast and then supply forecast are based on machine learning. Exactly. Which is actually really good to do, but then they can't fiddle with it. There's no fiddle factor,
Exactly.
And we created a metric, and I will use all the wrong language for it, because I didn't create it, but I termed it the fiddle factor metric. How many times does this get played with before we actually do it? And it was even getting played with by very senior leaders who just didn't like the numbers, because they didn't add up to the P&L they'd committed to. So then you changed all of this and you don't get the answer that you were meant to get anyway. So it's been a real good learning journey in terms of what goes on. And certainly in my younger days, I had a great lesson that I learned, and it was painful. I thought something was really good, and I still think it's very good, but the system wasn't ready for it. So I kept pushing the system to move to it, and it's like, no, I'm not going there. So then you become the problem, because you're pushing the agenda item that is a really good agenda item, but the system isn't ready to take it. The organisation, the whole, the company isn't ready yet to go there, so it bites back. And then you don't get any of it. Whereas maybe if I'd approached it differently, I would have got some of it. Yeah.
Completely makes sense. And just one last point. You had some background in technology as well, right? So being a chief supply chain officer with background on the technology and innovation side, I think that's a powerful mix. Someone coming from a technology side of the universe, I just have to say that, right? It just makes you extremely powerful understanding things across the board.
I love the fact that I got that chance, because you can then, one, you appreciate the technology side of the business so much more anyway. And two, you can add some value in a different way that probably surprises people sometimes, but actually helps the whole thing to get better and bigger. So I was very, very fortunate to be able to do that. Although at one point, when I was in Kimberly-Clark, they had me looking after quality and food safety. And I said, I don't want to do that. And I did it. But I'm the gamekeeper and the poacher. So I'm telling you everything's fine because I'm making it. That doesn't work. That's not helping us. So I think they've changed it now. I can't remember. I'd left as I was making these statements. But I think they tried to separate the organisation anyway, because that's not healthy.
Makes sense.
Well, Sandra, we appreciate this time you've spent with us. We appreciate you devoting your professional career to supply chain and making it better. As you had mentioned at the beginning, retirement is probably just a few weeks away, 5 weeks. Not that the countdown calendar is on, right? But, I was actually, while we were prepping, listened to a podcast you did maybe a year and a half ago, and you were talking about, how much you enjoy having a nice pint of Guinness as you're floating around in your pool in a pink flamingo. So I could only imagine the great times that are ahead of you as you embark on this next chapter. So again, want to appreciate everything you've done in supply chain, and maybe, what does retirement look like for you? Or is it a hard stop? Are you still looking to kind of dabble a little bit?
No, my husband would go mad if I did a hard stop. Can you imagine what it'd be like, and I love him too much to do that to him. So no, I'm going to be active. I'm working with a couple of companies. I'm going to be on a couple of boards. I'm on a board already, which is great. So I'll just do some of that. And I don't want to do too much though, because otherwise I'm not retired. I'm just having another career. And that's important, I think, to keep stimulated and to share your experience and knowledge, but you're not running anything anymore, and I think that's the difference for me, is I'm going to share what I've learned as much as I can without being obnoxious, hopefully, and I'm going to, help other people, and particularly, as you can imagine, I want to help a lot of women in leadership who are going into leadership, who want some help, and I find myself at the moment with the team that I'm still in, and with the organisation I'm still in, talking to a lot of younger women who just want some help in knowing how to be themselves, how to be more confident, how to manage the dilemma of career and people and, and children and all the other stuff that comes with it and family. And it's not easy. It's really not easy, particularly if you move around the world. I'm going to be doing some solid board jobs, and I'm going to be doing some consultancy with a company in one of the big consultancy companies, and I'm going to take some time for me.
Amazing. And maybe look out for a book in the future, I guess, right? Based on...
I haven't got the patience for a book.
Oh, you can find writers. You just go interview with them and let them write it. So
yes, that's good. I'll do whatever they call that, ghostwriting, isn't it, or something? Yeah. But I don't know what. Yeah. So I'm going to have fun at the same time.
Good. Very, very happy to hear that. Well, thank you, Sandra. We greatly appreciate you joining us. And I want to thank you again for dedicating your professional career to supply chain. And we wish you the absolute best on the other side in your active retirement journey. And thank you for joining us today.
I think that it's been a pleasure to talk to you. So thank you very much for your time. And thank you again for the invite. It was a very good conversation. I enjoyed it.
The pleasure was all ours. Thank you. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to maximize your supply chain. Available on all major podcasting channels. Thank you for listening and see you in the next episode.